My name is Emma Grayson, and I want to share something with you that changed my life forever. This is not just another story. It is my truth about what happens when we die, and it may challenge everything you've believed until now. On October 11th, 2012, I died. But God was not finished with me yet. He brought me back with a message, one I believe is meant for people like you who may be struggling, doubting, or afraid of what comes after this life. I understand how hard it can be to face uncertainty, especially when grief clouds the heart and unanswered questions linger like shadows at the edge of your mind. Maybe you've lost someone you love and wonder where they are now, whether they're safe, whether they can see you. Maybe you're afraid of dying yourself, wondering what it will feel like when that moment comes. Or maybe you've been questioning if there truly is anything beyond the final breath. Whatever your struggle, I want to tell you there is hope, real, tangible hope. I saw it with my own eyes. This testimony is not here to frighten you or shock you. It is meant to bring peace, to quiet the fears that keep you awake at night. I do not claim to have all the answers, but I know this: God is real. Jesus is alive. Death is not the end. What I experienced beyond this world was more real than anything I have ever touched, seen, or heard in my earthly life. One of the most surprising revelations I received was about cremation, something that had haunted me for years after my brother's passing. If you have ever wondered whether our spirits feel pain during cremation, or if the way we lay our loved ones to rest affects their eternal future, keep listening, because I found the answer. It all began on October 11th, 2012. That morning seemed ordinary. The air was still, the sun was pale behind a thin veil of clouds. I woke up feeling a little tired, but didn't think much of it. I had been dealing with fatigue and occasional chest pains for months, but nothing that seemed dangerous. I was 38 years old, working as a nurse, so I knew how to monitor my own health. Still, something about that day felt different, like a weight pressing on my chest that wasn't just physical. By noon, the pain had become sharp and relentless. I could hardly breathe, and my vision wavered as if the world were melting at the edges. I remember trying to call out for help. The sound barely left my lips before the world went dark. The very next moment, I was standing outside my own body, watching chaos erupt around me. The people I had worked beside, my friends, my colleagues, were now frantically working over my still form, their hands moving fast, their voices urgent. I wanted to tell them, "I'm fine, I'm right here," but no sound came. My words were trapped somewhere unreachable. A cold realization gripped me. Was this it? Had my life ended? Looking down at my pale, unmoving body sent a deep shudder through my spirit. How could I still think, still feel, if I was gone? Yet, in the middle of my panic, I heard something, not a sound, but a voice inside me, warm and steady. "You're not alone." And then, without any warning, I was pulled upward. It was not like floating, it was like a current had caught me, strong and sure, carrying me away from everything I knew. The hospital room shrank beneath me, fading into nothing, until only a blinding light remained ahead. But this light wasn't harsh. It did not burn my eyes. It soothed them. It wrapped around me like sunlight on a winter morning. It wasn't only brightness, it was peace itself. Every fear, every burden, every unspoken ache of my life dissolved into it. I floated there for what felt both like a single heartbeat and an unending eternity. In that space there was no clock, no rush, no sense of losing time. And slowly I realized I was no longer afraid. Something incredible, something holy was about to happen. As I moved deeper into the light, a transformation took place. I crossed from the heaviness of the physical into something vast and limitless. My soul felt free, free from pain, from the weight of years, from the endless noise of earthly life. I could no longer see my body, and I did not miss it. Around me, the light expanded endlessly. It wasn't just illumination, it was a presence saturated with love, so deep, it felt like it could hold the entire universe together. I did not walk, I did not fly, I simply willed myself forward, drawn to the source of this love. Without hesitation, without doubt, the light began to shift. Slowly, shapes took form, first as faint outlines, then as living details. Rolling hills bathed in gold, rivers that shone like melted crystal, skies alive with colors I had no name for. The air itself felt alive, resonating with a melody I could not hear with ears, but felt deep in my spirit. My entire being swelled with awe. This place was untouched by grief, by decay, by the scars of sin. I knew without question this was home. Then, in the distance, I saw him. The figure was walking toward me, but it felt as if I was moving toward him at the same time. My soul recognized him instantly. It was Jesus. Everything else faded away. Time did not exist in his presence. Light poured from him, not as something he wore, but as something he was. It was love made visible. His face was like no other, kindness and majesty interwoven in a way beyond human language. His eyes held eternity. They saw me, every part of me, yet there was no trace of condemnation, only understanding, only mercy. Without thinking, I bowed, not with my body, for I had none, but with my spirit. Reverence flooded me. Words dissolved on my tongue. All I could do was look at him, and then he spoke, not with sound, but with a voice that seemed to rise from within me, steady and warm and unshakable. "Emma," he said, "you are safe." Those words unraveled me completely. Peace, unlike anything I had known, washed over me. Fear was gone. Guilt was gone. The heavy shadows that had followed me my whole life were gone. In his presence, I felt whole in a way I had never known while alive. I had spent years battling self-doubt, guilt, and the weight of past mistakes. But here, none of it mattered. His love erased it all. I wanted to speak, to thank him, to ask him 1,000 questions, but the words wouldn't come. My thoughts felt like a river overflowing its banks, but my lips, if I even had them in this place, remained still. He smiled at me gently, the kind of smile that felt as though it could melt the hardest stone. It was as if he already knew every question and every longing hidden inside me. Then he extended his hand. When his fingers touched mine, I felt a warmth unlike anything I had ever known. A touch that didn't merely comfort my soul, but seemed to pour new life into it. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a transformation. In that single instant, I understood the reason for my existence. This was why I had been created. This was where I truly belonged. And then he began to lead me forward, deeper into the light, towards something even greater, something my human mind could barely begin to comprehend. As I walked beside him, my mind swirled with wonder. I had seen and felt so much in such a short time that it was almost overwhelming. And yet, underneath the blanket of peace that covered me, one thought rose again and again: my brother. I hadn't seen him yet, and my heart ached to know if he was here. But even more pressing was a question that had haunted me for years, one tied to the very moment of his passing. He had chosen cremation, and though I had tried to tell myself it didn't matter, some part of me had feared he might have suffered in some way. I hesitated before speaking, not out of fear, but because I didn't want to disturb the holiness of the moment. Istorzen de mead sib taber. The holiness of the moment.
He had chosen cremation, and though I had tried to tell him myself and tuvnorbel, still, the question burned within me until I could no longer keep it inside. "Lord," I whispered,
my voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Does the spirit feel pain during cremation?" Jesus turned to me. There was no surprise in his face, no disapproval, only love. His gaze was steady and knowing, as if he had been waiting for me to speak this question all along. "Child," he said, his voice like the calm air before dawn, "why have you carried this burden for so long?" My eyes stung with tears. "Because I'm afraid my brother suffered," I admitted. "When he died, he chose cremation. I told myself it didn't matter, but deep down, I've always wondered. Did he feel it? Was his spirit hurt in any way?" He looked at me for a moment, then reached out and laid his hand gently on mine. "Emma," he said, "the body is only a vessel. Once the soul leaves it, the body's pain and limitations have no power over it. The fire that touches the flesh can never reach the soul." His words washed over me like healing rain falling on parched ground. The relief I felt was like breathing after being underwater too long. But still, I had to ask more. "Then why do so many fear cremation?" I asked softly. He smiled again, a hint of light dancing in his eyes. "Peace. Because they misunderstand the truth about eternity. The body returns to the dust. It was always meant to, but the soul, your brother's soul, belongs to me. Nothing can separate you from my love." I felt the peace settle deeper, like an anchor dropping into still waters. For so long I had imagined my brother's last moments being full of pain, but now I knew the truth. The body is temporary. The soul is forever. Death, in any form, is not an end. It is only a doorway. Before I could speak again, he took my hand and said gently, "Come. There is someone you need to see." My heart quickened. I had missed my brother with an ache that never faded. We had been close since childhood, sometimes arguing like siblings do, but always united when it mattered. His passing had left a wound in my life, and though I had learned to live with it, I had never stopped longing for him. Now in this place of light, I dared to hope. We stepped into a vast expanse where colors shifted like living water and light danced in the air as though it were alive. The very atmosphere seemed to respond to my emotions. And then, in the distance, I saw him. A gasp rose in me. Though I no longer had lungs, the feeling was unmistakable. He stood there, smiling, looking exactly as he had in the strength of his youth, whole, radiant, untouched by illness or age. Without thinking, I moved toward him. There was no sense of distance here. The space between us vanished instantly, and suddenly I was in his arms. Joy, unlike anything I had ever known, surged through me. For a long moment, we didn't speak. There was no need. That embrace spoke louder than words. It was love, forgiveness, and homecoming all at once. When he finally pulled back, I studied his face. His skin glowed with a soft, golden light. His eyes shone with peace. The weariness I remembered from his final days was gone forever. "You're here," I whispered, my voice shaking. He smiled, warm and unshaken. "Of course I am. Did you ever truly doubt it?" I swallowed hard. "I did," I confessed. "After you chose cremation, I worried. I thought maybe it hurt you." His expression softened, and he took my hands. "Emma," he said, "if only you could have seen what I saw when I left my body. There was no pain, no fear, only light, only love. The flames that touched my body never touched me. I was already free. Hearing it from him broke something open in me. The years of guilt and worry began to dissolve. I was wrong to doubt," I murmured. "No," he said with kindness. "You weren't wrong to care. You loved me. That's why you asked. But now you know the truth. Nothing can separate us from the love of God, not even death." Tears welled in my eyes again, but now they were tears of healing, not grief. Still holding his hands, I asked one more question. "Is burial better than cremation? Does it matter in the end?" Jesus, who had been watching with quiet joy, stepped forward. His presence still radiated that overwhelming love, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to listen. "My child," he said gently, "what matters is not what happens to the body, but what happens to the soul." He gestured toward the horizon, where countless others stood in peace, reunited with those they loved. "All who trust in me will rise again, whether their bodies return to dust naturally, are laid beneath the earth, or are consumed by fire. None of these things decide their eternal home." I absorbed every word, knowing they would stay with me forever. "The body," he continued, "is temporary. It was never meant to last. From the moment you are born, it begins to decay. But the soul, your true self, is eternal. It belongs to me, and nothing can separate you from my love." I thought about how many people feared cremation, seeing it as disrespectful or even harmful to the spirit. Some clung to tradition because that was all they had ever known. Others acted out of fear, passing on beliefs without truly questioning them. But now, hearing this from Jesus himself, I understood it was never about the method of departure. It was about the destination, the place where the soul truly belonged. Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with compassion, carrying both truth and reassurance. "Your brother did not suffer," he said with certainty. "The very moment he left his body, he was with me. The fire that consumed his remains was powerless against his soul. Death, in any form, is nothing more than a doorway, an entry into something far greater." I turned to my brother, who gave me a warm, steady nod. "Exactly," he said. "I felt nothing but peace the instant I stepped away from my body. The cremation was just a physical process, no more painful than autumn leaves drifting away on the wind." The words sank deep into my spirit. A relief I couldn't measure poured through me. Years of fears, silent worries, and unanswered questions fell away like chains breaking. I realized I had been clinging to concerns about the body, when all along the soul was the true treasure. Jesus placed his hand gently on my shoulder, and the warmth of his touch felt like it reached into places of my heart I had never known could be healed. "Do not let fear or tradition rule your beliefs," he said firmly, yet tenderly. "What matters is faith in me. Trust that I hold every soul, regardless of what happens to the body." I bowed my head, overcome with gratitude. I had come searching for answers, and I had found them, not abstract words, but living truth. My brother was safe. I was safe. And one day, when my work on earth was finished, I would return to this place to him. It was only then that I began to take in the full beauty around us. Heaven wasn't just a place of peace and love. It was a realm where everything existed in perfect harmony, with purpose flowing through every detail. I lifted my eyes and truly saw the sky was nothing like the one I had known on earth. It shimmered with hues that shifted and danced, deep gold melting into silver, blue rippling like living water. The colors seemed to breathe. The air itself carried a sense of life, as though every particle was part of a great, invisible song. There were no sounds as I understood them, no wind, no rustle of leaves. Yet there was music. It wasn't made of notes or instruments, but it resonated inside me, a silent symphony that seemed to come from the very heart of creation. Beyond us stretched a land more vast and perfect than anything I could have imagined. Towering structures sparkled like crystal, not built by human hands, but existing in flawless unity with the living world around them. Rivers of pure light flowed like liquid joy through valleys of vibrant green, and the trees bore fruit that glowed softly, as though lit by an eternal flame. Everything was alive with purpose. Jesus gestured toward a group of radiant beings in the distance. They were not like the winged angels I had pictured, yet they shone with an unmistakable purity. They moved with a grace that made every step seem intentional, their faces serene as they worked. Some tended gardens, overflowing with flowers that shifted colors as they swayed. Others moved among the people, offering words or even just a touch that brought immediate comfort. "Hey, serve," Jesus said, answering the question forming in my heart. "Every soul here has a role. As you had a purpose on earth, you will have one here. Service here is never heavy, it is joy, it is fulfillment." I watched as a woman knelt beside a man who looked troubled. She placed her hand on his shoulder, and instantly his face softened, as though a lifetime of burdens had been lifted in that single moment. It struck me then, heaven was not a place of endless idleness. It was a place of active love. Souls grew here, healed here, helped each other here. My brother smiled knowingly. "You see it now, don't you?" he asked. "This isn't just a paradise you drift through. It's a kingdom. It's home. It's where you belong." I nodded slowly, my heart swelling with awe. Heaven was not a distant dream. It was the most real place I had ever been. And yet, I knew I couldn't stay. Even as I stood bathed in the warmth of heaven's light, I felt something shift. The love remained, but an awareness rose within me. This was not my final arrival. Jesus turned to me, his eyes still tender, but now carrying a weight of urgency. "Emma," he said softly, "it is not yet your time." The words pierced me. I didn't want to leave. I had found peace here, unity with my brother, and a purpose that made the struggles of earth seem small. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "Please don't send me back." He stepped closer, his presence both steady and unshakable. "You still have work to do," he said. "There are lives that will be changed because of what you've seen. People need the hope you now carry." I clenched my hands, feeling resistance rise in me. "But I can't go back," I admitted. "I can't face pain again. I don't want to feel fear again." Placing his hand over where my heart would be, he spoke with calm authority. "You will not face death again. Not in the way you fear. When you return, you will live differently. You will carry this truth with you, and it will guide your steps." I turned to my brother, hoping for his plea to let me stay, but he only smiled, his eyes gentle. "You'll come back," he said, "and when your real time comes, you won't hesitate." Tears blurred my vision as the pull began, gentle but certain. I didn't want to go, but I knew the decision was already made. With one last look at Jesus, I felt myself being drawn backward. The light receded. The perfect peace faded, replaced by a rushing darkness, and then a violent gasp. My body jerked as though I had fallen from a great height. Air burned my lungs as I sucked in breath, my heart slamming in my chest. I was alive. For a heartbeat, the hospital room seemed frozen. Then the sound crashed back, in nurses shouting instructions, monitors beeping wildly, doctors rushing to my side. Someone called my name, but everything felt sharper, louder, brighter than before. The overhead lights were almost blinding. The scent of antiseptic was sharp in my nose. My skin prickled as though my body didn't quite fit me anymore. I turned my head slowly, disoriented, the memory of heaven still glowing in my spirit. My brother's laughter echoed in my ears. Jesus' words settled deep inside me. I had been there, I had seen it, I had lived it, and now I was back. A nurse leaned over me, pressing her stethoscope to my chest, her hands trembling as she listened. "She's alive," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Another doctor checked the flatline on the monitor, then looked at me as if he was staring at an apparition. "Emma," one of them finally managed to say, "you were gone. For minutes, we thought we'd lost you." I opened my mouth to respond, but at first no words came. My throat was dry, my body weak, yet my spirit burned with urgency. I had something I had to say. Turning toward them, my voice came out low but steady. "I saw heaven," I rasped. "I saw Jesus, and I saw my brother. He's okay." The room fell silent. A few exchanged skeptical glances, while others looked quietly shaken. I didn't care about their doubt. I had proof. Proof in the way my heart now beat with renewed purpose. Proof in the way my soul ached to share what I had witnessed. I had been given a second chance, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. In the days following my return, I wrestled with how to put my experience into words. How do you describe the indescribable? How do you convey the depth of peace I had felt, the certainty that death was not an ending but a beginning? Even so, I knew I had been entrusted with a message I could not keep to myself. When people asked me what heaven was like, I spoke of the light, the beauty, and the overwhelming sense of love that filled every inch of that realm. But more than anything, I told them about Jesus, about how his presence alone was enough to erase every fear, how his voice spoke directly to the soul, and how his love was the very heartbeat of that place. I told them he sees us, knows us, and holds us in ways we cannot fully comprehend until we stand before him. I spoke about my brother, how his soul had not suffered, how cremation had not severed him from God's love. I shared my own journey through years of doubt and fear, and how Jesus had met me in the middle of it, answering the very question that had haunted me for so long. I wanted people to understand that death does not define us, that our bodies are only temporary vessels for souls destined for something far greater. Most of all, I urged people to seek Jesus while there was still time. I told them that heaven was real, but so was the alternative. I had not seen hell, but I knew from the scriptures and the words of Christ that judgment was real, and I knew, beyond a shadow of doubt, that salvation could be found only in one place, through faith in Jesus. I begged them not to wait until they were standing at the edge of eternity to make peace with God. I pleaded with them to surrender their lives to Christ, to seek his grace, to walk in his truth while they still could. Because when I stood before him, when I felt his hand in mine, I learned something that reshaped my life forever. This life is fleeting, but eternity is real, and nothing, absolutely nothing, should matter more than preparing for it. Since that day, my life has never been the same. Before my near-death encounter, I lived with fear, doubt, and a constant sense of unease, worrying about tomorrow, grieving the past, and never truly at peace in the present. Now, everything is different. I no longer fear death. I no longer cling desperately to this life. Instead, I live with purpose, knowing my days are numbered and that my true home lies ahead. Not long after waking up in that hospital bed, I left my job as a nurse, not because I feared witnessing death, but because I sensed God had a different path for me. I began sharing my testimony anywhere I could: churches, community centers, support groups, even small online forums where people were wrestling with grief and doubt. I never set out to become a public speaker or writer, but the Lord opened doors I could not have forced open on my own. People began reaching out, some fearful of cremation, as I once was, others grieving loved ones and unsure if they were truly in a better place. I shared my story not to argue or convince, but to remind them that God's love is far greater than our fears. In time, I started a small ministry focused on comforting the grieving, helping them see that death is not the end, and that loved ones are never lost forever. I began writing personal letters to families who had lost someone to suicide, assuring them that their loved one was not beyond God's mercy. I counseled those afraid of cremation, explaining that our bodies are merely temporary shells and that our souls belong to eternity. In tar bikana, tab, turignaman to madive, wafab. Every conversation, every message reminded me why I had been sent back. But my transformation wasn't just in ministry. It touched every part of my personal life. I stopped wasting time on petty arguments or empty pursuits. I treasured my relationships with greater care, knowing that one day we would all stand before Jesus. I learned to live in gratitude for each breath, each sunrise, each quiet moment. Most of all, I began to live with hope Hope that death is not the end, but the gateway to a beautiful forever. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my porch and look up at the stars, remembering where I was in that timeless place. I remember the warmth of the light, the peace that wrapped around me, the presence of Jesus.
And
I know without a doubt that one day I will return. Until then, I will keep telling my story. Because if even one person finds hope through it, then my return to this world will have been worth every moment. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see the glow of heaven. I can hear the faint echo of my brother's laughter. I can still feel the joy of being in the presence of the one who made me. Yes, I still feel the longing to go back to step again into that perfect peace, but I know my time here is not yet finished. I was brought back for a reason to speak this truth, to comfort the hurting, and to remind the world that eternity is real. I used to fear death. I used to wonder what happened to the body after the last breath, whether cremation could cause pain, whether my brother had suffered, but now I know better. Death is not the enemy, it is simply a threshold. And on the other side, Jesus waits. He waits for every believer, for every soul that trusts in him, for every heart that seeks his love. So if you are hearing these words, wherever you are, whatever burden you carry, know this, you are not alone. Your grief is not the end of the story. Your doubts do not determine your eternity. Jesus loves you, and he has prepared a place for you. Whether your body is buried beneath the soil or turns to ash in the wind, it does not matter. What matters is the state of your heart right now. So I urge you, don't delay. Don't put off surrendering your life to Christ. Don't let fear hold you back from the promise of eternity.